Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to be exploring one of my favorite subjects, past life regression and past lives, as well as the Acacic Records, and what it is like to explore those dimensions. I hope you enjoy this episode as we dive deep into the mysteries of past lives and the Acacic Records.
Welcome to Modern Sages Podcast.
I'm Jen Gilbreth.
And I'm Candace Coons.
With over 25 years combined, we have delivered messages from beyond,
explored ancient healing wisdom, and integrated these profound teachings into our everyday life.
We are passionate about creating new ways of being human in the modern age by integrating the wisdom of the past with the present and coming into remembrance of who we truly are.
Are you ready to change your relationship to life itself? If the answer is yes, your journey begins now.
As always, we are extremely excited to just jump in. But before we do that, we wanted to talk about our favorite drinks today. So today we actually have a green drink. And so as you can see, it's just this beautiful color. We just have used a juicer, and what is in this is a pineapple. So one pineapple, a cucumber, zucchini, and a lime. And then I actually really love to do juiced ginger. And so I added like a good amount of ginger in here as well. So it gets a little bit of a good kick.
Yes, and celery too.
And celery, yes, I forgot about the celery. So this is a recipe that Candace shared with me, and I love to drink this. Me and my husband drink one almost every day that we can, and it's so uplifting. It's so cleansing. You just feel amazing, and it truly is. So it helps with like detoxing, and it just makes you feel so great.
Yes. I mean, a lot of people have heard about the importance of green juices, but this recipe is so delicious. And I love, did you mention that you add pineapple? I can't remember if you added pineapple.
Yeah.
That combination of greens and pineapple together for me is my favorite combination, because the citrus and the sweet really, makes it super sweet and light, as opposed to like the heavy green juices that you can have like with apple or some of the other fruits. And so that's my favorite combination, is that pineapple green combo. If it's like romaine and pineapple, or celery and pineapple and zucchini, but that combo it's perfect.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And I love adding the ginger because, of course, we've talked about ginger, but ginger is good for digestion. It's good for inflammation. It's good there's so many benefits of that too. So I love to just add that in to get a little kick, but it's also super refreshing, and you just feel so good.
Yeah. Green juice it's so good for gut health. We talked about how ginger is great for digestion and inflammation, and green juice does the same thing. It helps with inflammation. It helps with gut health. It does amazing things for your skin. You can always tell people who juice regularly because they have this glow about them. All of that nutrients is going to that organ of the body, and it's cleansing the skin. And it's so great for your skin health as well. And what I also love about it is a lot of people who are malnourished, this is the quickest way to get nutrients into your system. This is the closest thing that we have to an infusion, a blood infusion, an IV. In the past, and my dear friend Janelle, she really struggled during her pregnancy. She had that disorder where you are sick every single day, brutally sick. I felt so bad. I'd never seen a mother suffer like this during pregnancy. She'd been hospitalized a couple of times. And so anyway, she was reaching out to me. She's like, I can't keep anything down. I can't keep anything down. And I'm malnourished. I have no energy. And so I started juicing for her. And I would bring in a quart of, or sometimes 2 quarts of fresh juice. And I would go back forth between the green juice recipe with just a little bit of that ginger, and also watermelon juice with just a little bit of beet. And so, and sometimes I would add a little bit of mint to the watermelon beet juice, but she was able to keep it down and she started to feel better, because
Wow.
that is the closest thing that we come to an IV. So if you want to be hydrated and be filled with nutrients, if you're really struggling with getting enough nutrients and vitamins and minerals in your body and live enzymes, this is a wonderful way to do it. Like even during this COVID season, the pandemic and the flu season and all of that, we really, all of us should be incorporating that at least once a day, because that's going to improve our immune system and our defense system against those things. But yeah, you don't get better than that green juice. It is hands down the best thing for you ever.
Well, and think about it too. Mother Earth has provided us with fruits and vegetables, just like herbs. And so, of course, it can be easy for us to want to lean on the cold medicine, the cough medicine, all those things. And we might not incorporate what Mother Earth has given us during these
Mhm.
times, especially during cold season. And so I think that's a perfect example too of using Mother Earth and what she has for us in healing and supporting us throughout each season of the year, as well as each season of life. Candace, I feel like this is such an amazing subject. Akashic Records as well as past lives. Um, it's something that when I first started to meet with you, it was something that was a little more foreign to me. I wasn't necessarily sure, but in the past, I've really gotten into listening to and reading a lot about people's near death experiences or NDEs. And a lot of people experience understanding past lives or exploring those things or being aware of different dimensions of past life living. So I always was kind of intrigued by the conversation of it, but I kind of grew up thinking like, why would we choose to come back to experience more? And so I
Yes.
think that exploring the Akashic records as well as past lives is something that a lot of people think about but don't fully understand. And so I just am anxiously excited to jump in and to hear more from you about it and then also share my experiences as well.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll both share a couple of our personal experiences with past life experiences in the Akashic records. Yeah, this is a huge part of the shamanic path. And when I work with students, this is a part of the training. This is part of what we explore as you navigate and this multi-dimensional reality and self that you are.
I just have to
It
say that I don't know what it is, but there are so many angels and spirit and connection. It's like so vibrant today. It's like
it is.
there's just this energy of excitement and like it's time. Let's share, let's move forward because this is something that's been pushed in the dark and it's time to bring
Yes.
to light. And it's like, I just feel it so
It's
strong.
intense, right? I know. I was feeling
Yeah.
it when we were doing our prayer today and invocation. I was like, whoa,
Yeah. It's so strong.
intense, very intense today. I love it. Welcome, welcome, everyone.
Yes. Welcome.
We're so grateful. Yeah, well, we talk about how we are a multidimensional being. And when we explore that multidimensional being of ourselves, we understand that we are not held captive to time and space. As infinite beings, we have all the time in creation to explore who we are and all of the different expressions of who we are. It's really beautiful. And when I've talked to some people who were against the idea of past lives, a lot of times it's based off this feeling like, why would I do that? Why would I torture myself again and again? Or what is the point
Yeah.
of doing what is right and doing what is just? And all of they go through a lot of different questions when exploring this. But once we do dive deep into it, it is such a healing discovery. because you realize that there is no time limit to your awakening and your discovery. You are not being pressed to figure everything out at once. Or let's say your life was cut early, and or maybe you were not, or maybe a soul didn't even get the opportunity to be born into the world. Maybe they died in womb. And when we're coming from that perspective that there's only one chance to have a body, it can be perceived as very limiting, right? It's like, gosh, it's not much time. I don't have much time. And what is the purpose of all of that? Well, in truth, when you do this healing path, when you come into your awakening and remembrance of who you are, first of all, and this is a hard one for a lot of people to wrap their brain around, because they're like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But in truth, you are already perfect. You just forgot you were perfect. And that period of time in your life when you were sleeping and you were unaware of who you really were, that was all part of the journey. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not being punished. It's part of the journey of being human. It's this whole process of, exploration and being caught in the world of Maya and forgetfulness and the veil, and then coming back into remembrance and becoming the hero of your own journey. It's the whole thing that is beautiful, and it's perfect just the way it is.
Absolutely.
Hurt people hurt people. That's just the way it is. When we act out of energies that are not centered in love, it's because we have forgotten, whether it be temporary or long term, but we have forgotten who we really are. We don't understand, or we have forgotten that energy is everywhere, and what you put out, it has to return to you. That it's the law of the universe, and it doesn't mean that you're being punished and with karma and you have to come back until you get it right. No, it's just that when you send that energy out, everything is cyclical. It has to return to the one that sent the energy out. One way or another, we're going to experience that return, because that is part of the awakening or the learning of creation.
Yeah, I think that even knowing that too is that you're talking about this karmic energy, but it's also known as consequence, right? Is a lot in Christian terms, it's like we
Yep.
have choice and consequence. And it feels a lot more harsh. It feels like the karmic understanding has this flowing energy where it feels like choice and consequence is a lot more like, it feels a lot more dominant to me, but it's just similar experiences. It's just the same concept, but maybe just different energies put forth.
Yeah. Well, we're creators. So this law of free will and free agency and law of cause and effect energy, when we are creating all of the time. And so when we put that energy out, it's meant to come back for us to feel it, to experience what we've created, whether that be physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually.
Yeah.
It's not a form of punishment. It's a path to awakening and remembrance, because when you become more awake, you become a lot more accountable. You become a lot more aware of the energy you bring into a space, of the energy that you send out into the world, because you're not disconnected from anything. Like whatever comes out is going to return to you one way or another. So why not, out of an act of awareness of who you are, but also as an act of love for yourself and for all those that you encounter, why not put the proper loving energy out into the world? Because that energy is going to come back to you threefold, because
Absolutely.
sometimes we need more than one repetition, right? To really get things. So I know the energy is in that that trinity it's the law of three, where it's like when you send out, it comes back to you more than once, because it's really helping you integrate it. Every time that return helps you deepen the understanding, deepen the understanding, deepen that understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think too that when it comes to past lives, people don't necessarily agree or understand, but then there's also the space of like, why would I want to remember? Why live in the past? And exploring past life regression, and you do hypnotherapy with past life regression and readings and Akashic records and all of the things, but it's not to hold us back or to hold us like not live our life because we're too worried about exploring past experiences. But there are some things that do factor in that can lead to our life here.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we have ancestral DNA, we have things that are passed down genetically from generation to generation. Science has proven that, right? We also have mental, physical, emotional, all these things spiritual that are brought down. And so, if you could imagine, even just knowing the generational chains and the generational clearing, is there sometimes are things that do carry on with us from lifetime to lifetime.
Yes.
And I was listening to a book called Many Lives. Is it Same Master, Many Lives? Have you
Oh,
heard that?
yeah. Yeah.
It's something like that. Many masters, same life. I'll have to look it up. But in this concept is he was a hypnotherapist, and he would help people, and it would bring up like all these different past lives without him really meaning to jump into that space. And he did notice that a lot of times maybe someone who might have a physical element showing up here could
Mm-hmm.
be from a past life experience. So he talks about how one man, he had a lot of heart problems, and he could not for the life of him stop drinking alcohol. And so this was kind of like his last thing to keep his family together. And he's like, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but this is the last thing that I have to try to keep my marriage together, essentially. And they go into hypnotherapy, and he brings up this experience where he had something, or something happened to his heart, and essentially that he passed from that, and it was like he could see it bleeding into this life in his heart
Mm-hmm.
space. And so that's like a very extreme case, but it's not possible.
Absolutely. Because you think about energy is like a web, right? It's like a web of energy. There is no exact cutoff date or cutoff spot from one lifetime to another. It's still energetically woven in to the whole, right? And so this is why, too, that whatever we do sends a ripple effect throughout this web of creation. Everything, the energy we bring into a space, the intention behind we do it, it sends a wave of energy throughout this web. And there is no such thing, really, truly. We have time and space, and the concept of time and space, in order for us to understand our journey and explore this journey. But when you journey, and we've talked about what journeying is in our last couple of episodes, we've talked about journey a couple of times and did a whole episode. But when you journey and explore this web of life, you can go backwards, forwards. There's also endless dimensions within this particular life that you are aware of. And people don't realize that they can shift their energy into different timelines of this same life. And you can raise octave or energetic levels and outcomes within this life. When we start exploring past lives and the Akashic records, this awareness becomes very real and strong. It's like, wow. So this is why in this lifetime I have this, let's say, unrealistic fear or phobia, and I can't place where it was rooted. And then I explore a past life and I find that something happened where this experience happened that put such tremendous fear in my experience. And that energy had a ripple effect into this present life that's been kind of woven. And what's amazing about healing, right, Jen, we've had this experience again and again. People overcomplicate healing because they think that you got to go through all of these steps. The most powerful step towards healing is just awareness.
Yeah.
It's not so much like for you figuring out how to fix it or what you got to do. It's like just be with this for a moment.
Uh-huh.
And then 9 times out of 10, that energy will shift on its own. And then the energy of wisdom will rise up inside of you, and you will take that information and you'll know what you need to do next. But again and again, when we've done these past life regressions with myself or you or other people, it's like those energies, once they become aware of where it was rooted, all of a sudden it doesn't have the power over the person anymore. It's like even if the energy starts or that phobia starts to, poke its ugly head a little bit, it's like as soon as you remember that past life regression, say, oh, that was rooted when I had this experience. It didn't happen here. I'm okay. I'm safe.
I'm
That
safe.
energy dissipates. And eventually it just goes. Like you just don't have it. It has no trigger on your energetic field anymore. And that's so liberating, right?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the
Absolutely.
beautiful things about exploring this is that you can alleviate that bondage, that those triggers, those things that are inside of you that you couldn't make sense of. It's like, can I share a story with myself?
Yes, absolutely.
So I was studying with my shaman and we were exploring the web of life. And she's like, I want you to go and explore a past life that is energetically affecting you in this life in the way of your fears. And so as I explored this, I'm like, what are my fears? And I had an unrealistic fear, a fear I don't know where it came from. And it was the fear that I would be accused of shoplifting. I have never shoplift. This is not something that I do, but it really took away from my joy. It was like I couldn't go just shopping with girlfriends or friends or family and just have a great old time. It was like, it was weird. It was like, oh, girl, I'm like, I'm not taking anything. Like I'd have this weird feeling, like, even if I wasn't physically saying that, but I'd be thinking that in my mind.
That's
And
so
it would
interesting.
create this weird fear and tension. So I couldn't like truly enjoy myself. Well, so that was what I wanted to explore. I'm like, where is this rooted? Like, where did this come from? And so I did the past life regression with my shaman. It took me back. It was the 1300s. I was a little boy. I was, I think, 11 or 12 at the time. And people were shopping in the market. And I was um, not misunderstood, but they accused me of stealing and they thought it was me. It was actually a different boy. But at the time, they thought it was me. So I was accused wrongly of stealing. They ended up bearing me up to my neck. And the punishment for stealing was being stoned to death. So I was buried up to my neck and I was stoned to death in that lifetime. So she had me go through that lifetime and go through the death process. What was really interesting though, is even there were certain people that I was very intimidated by in this life that showed up as one of the people that had stoned me. So there was a recognition that the reason I had this unrealistic fear towards this person, that was because they were in that front row of stone and I saw their faces and the cruelty. And it just affected me deeply on an energetic level. So anyway, I crossed over, I went in between lives and I spoke with that particular energy or personality of my soul. And I said, I am from a different time. And I want you to know that you are safe, that you don't need to carry this energy any longer, that I am happy, that you are happy, that we are one and you are safe. So anyway, I came out of that past life. And after that, now that I go shopping, I never had that energy. It was like, and it was funny because I didn't even realize it until one day I'm like, wait a minute, where is it? And then I realized it was gone.
It's gone. It's no longer there.
It just wasn't there. So anyway, it's interesting, and this is what I found again and again, is that once we explore the root of that energy just, it transmutes, and it releases its attachment to you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and for those who might not be fully into this whole past life idea, you could also, I know before I used to think like, oh, maybe that's just an ancestor's experience that you're connecting into. And if you want to think that, that's totally fine too, right?
Mhm.
There's no wrong or right way. We're not saying you have to believe in this, but we both have definitely experienced some crazy healing that has come about because of that. And so I love that you're talking about how it just kind of left. It wasn't fully in your space anymore with the shoplifting.
Mhm.
And I feel like I've experienced quite a bit of different things in that space as well. As we're talking, I'm like recollecting like four different major experiences that I've experienced just in the time that we have explored past lives together. And I'm just trying to decide on which one to share because there's so many good
The one
experience.
that really stood out for me, Jen, was when you talked about like, where is this witch wound rooted?
Yes.
And that was at the very beginning of our work together. And you're like, I have this fear and I don't know where it's rooted. And I was like, let's go explore it. Let's see if we
Yeah.
can find where it was rooted. And that
That's
was
true.
powerful.
Yeah, because it was so interesting is I have always been super drawn to spirituality, and I also felt extremely wounded, like to the next level, and this fear of standing in my truth, of speaking out, of anything. And I remember even you were like, "Hey, let's explore the possibility of like oracle cards or tarot." And I was like, "Absolutely not. There's no way, Candace.
Yes.
No, no, no." And you're like, just think about it and just see how it fits. And so now I'm like, since this past life, and we'll go into that, I feel like I've changed my perspective in a lot of ways where I feel like I don't think that something has to be bad or wrong. And there's good in everything. And I didn't experience that before until after this past life. So we went into the sacred meadow, which we posted about that journey last time.
Mhm.
And in the sacred meadow, we climbed the tree and we were brought up kind of like floating into the sky into the space of like this higher council above, which we'll have to do a whole podcast on, lower, middle, and upper realms. But
Yes.
I was so shamed to be standing before the high council. And for those who don't know, the high council is like Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother. It's like Jesus, Buddha, Allah. There's like Mary Magdalene. There's like so many different people who are there who have had a very great impact upon the world that has been
Mm.
almost like mega thought leaders, is what
Mhm.
I like to kind of think of it as. And I remember standing up there just being so ashamed. Like, I'm like, I'm not worthy to be up here. And you're like, well, why do you feel that way? And then all of a sudden, it was like we like rode this web, and all of a sudden we were in this forest. And as we're moving forward, it's like we're walking, and I just noticed people behind me with like pitchforks and what are those sticks that they're like burning? Like
Mhm.
pitchforks and like lighters, like sticks with like lights that you're walking, fires, you're walking in the dark meadow.
Torches. Yeah.
Torches, that's
Torches.
the word. And we come upon this lady, and this was during the Salem witch trial time. That was crazy. My light just got brighter.
Yeah.
The
Saw that.
Salem witch trials. And I saw her, and it was like we were accusing her and like getting ready to burn her at the stake. And I remember looking in her eyes and being like, yes, this is her. Like I told him, like, yes, this is her. I turned her in, and I remember watching her burn. And I remember staring at her and just watching in her eyes. And I felt so shameful because I had participated in the dances, the ceremonies, the things that they experienced in the woods, which, as we've talked about the witch wound, yes, there's light and dark in all things, but that doesn't have to mean they were only doing dark things. They were just very aware of spiritual and energetic
Mhm.
connection in the physical realm. They were
Yeah.
very spiritual and energetic in a world that solely focused on mental and physical survival. And I remember participating and being a part of what she was experiencing. And then I turned her in. And I
And
remember,
yeah,
go
and that
ahead.
guilt, I remember too, like you feeling like, and what you discovered, like it was so hard to deal with that shame and guilt, but it was also a form you were trying to survive. Like you could have just as easily had been burned at the stake. And that's what was so hard, because it was a decision of self-protection, of survival. And that was so powerful, Jen. I mean, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I just remember
No,
like
you're
that
great.
feeling. It was very powerful.
It's so interesting because even speaking about it, I feel like my
Feel it.
throat is like kind of full.
Mhm.
But the thing about that too is I watched her burn and I was like, I am so ashamed of this. And I even remember in this life going to school when we had that week about the witch trials and we watched a movie upon it, and I made myself sick to not go to school. I was like, I can't go to school.
Wow.
And I
I didn't
remember
know that.
thinking, I can't believe they're still talking about this. And then the next day, I had a massive headache. And for 2 days after, I didn't go to school because I didn't want to hear about it. And so that dawned on me after. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so connected. This is all one area. And then, kind of like you said, I went back into this in between that life and my life now. And I was able to talk to that woman, and we were able to find a lot of understanding and closure and completion, I would say. But it was something that was definitely needful. And I look back and I'm like, wow. And now since then, I'm like a lot more open. Like everyone has their own spiritual journey, and mine doesn't have to be theirs, and theirs doesn't have to be mine. And it's okay to stand in my truth and to share myself. And I don't have to be so fearful. So then when we came
Yes.
across the book Witch by Lisa Lister, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, this book is amazing.
It was liberation and a book.
Oh, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's just one of my experiences when it comes to past life that really was really empowering for myself.
Yeah. For me, it was an experience of forgiveness and compassion.
Yeah.
It was a scary time to be in this world. And there's so much wounding that has taken place around our spirituality and around this self empowerment and self exploration of who you really are. There's been major wounding there. And so it's like, even this whole idea of exploring past lives when you've been told there aren't past lives or there's no such thing as reincarnation, when you do actually open yourself up, it doesn't take you away from your core belief system. It just cultivates a way for you to understand how magnificent you are, for one, two, how everything is energetically connected, that there is no such thing as time and space. It also helps you really cultivate a lot of forgiveness for yourself, the times that you experience life where you were not awake and deep in the sleep of Maya or the world. It also helps you cultivate forgiveness for others, because when you do a past life regression, and we're going to talk about the Akashic Records next, but when you explore these things, it's not just understanding like where that root causes, right? What is that trigger, where it was rooted, but seeing that life, how it panned out. Because after we did that, we went to like different parts of your life, including the time of death and going and dying and going into the other side. And once you go to the other side of the in between, you get to understand how other people saw things and why they made those decisions that they made. And it doesn't make things right or wrong. It just, having that awareness and understanding helps you cultivate compassion and understanding, and and you can cultivate that forgiveness, because forgiveness, again, it never says, hey, it's okay that you did X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
It's saying, look, I understand that that had to happen for the growth of everyone involved. I understand where you were coming from, and I
Yes.
release you, or I release myself. Like, just
Yeah.
even that experience that you had, it was a journey of self-forgiveness, because you were trying to survive at a very scary time in history. And that wounding and that knowing inside of yourself was an awful place to be. It was a terrible way to live your life. And when you were able to see that from a bigger perspective, you were able to understand, not only to forgive yourself, but also understand your value coming as your future self into a time where this was rooted, and be able to heal yourself and say, you just didn't
Yeah.
know who you were, or they didn't know who they were. They didn't know what they were doing, because all these people hurt people when they don't remember, who they
Yeah. And
are, when they're forgetting.
that's part of our journey. And as I deliver messages as a medium, it is very interesting to how you're talking about this space of communication and nothing's right or wrong, and you're very aware of everyone's perspective. Is I feel like that happens so often, and the majority of the messages that come forward are all about,
Yeah.
they at least at some point they address that space of completion. I never really like to say closure, because I feel like closure just is so ended, but like it's like the circle of completion of like, I see the soul contract. I see what I was here to learn. I understand. And instead of being
Yes.
held bound by the physical, this concept of what we think it needs to be, it's like this circle of completion, this roundabout, like I get the bigger perspective. And it's so beautiful when that comes forward. And sometimes it's hard for us here to physically understand it, but knowing in a spiritual way that it's this completion is just like with those who have passed that we know here. We can do that same thing with past lives or with experiences that we have had. So it's just it's absolutely beautiful. It's,
Yeah, it's rooted in love.
yeah,
And
it is.
a discernment is a huge piece of the spiritual path, discernment.
Yes. Yes.
Recognizing, where are things rooted? Are they rooted in love, or are they rooted in fear? My experience of past lives, and they'll only show themselves when you're ready, by the way. They don't just
Yeah.
all expose themselves at once. They expose when they're ready, when you're ready to cultivate that. But it's always rooted in love. It never pulls you away from love or pulls you into fear. It brings understanding and clarity and freedom. And that's the beautiful thing that I've seen from it. And the Akashic Records, we talk about the Akashic Records, and this is the collective storage house of all things that have happened here in human existence in the world of Maya. It also stores information from other places as well. So
I always like to say it's a record of the universe,
it
past, present,
is.
future, all knowing. It's where you
Yes.
can literally access anything and everything
Yes.
connected to the galaxy, even, I would
Love
say.
that. Yes. Excellent. One of the things too that you explore in the upper world, when you're doing journey work, is the Akashic Records.
Yes.
And it shows up like this massive library. And I think the reason it shows up that way for us is because it's a way for us to understand its energy. Like you're saying, it's a place that stores all of the records of the universe, time, past, present, future. And it is a place where you could go every journey. There's so many different things that you can explore in the Akashic Records. But what I love to use the Akashic Records for is you can go there directly to understand the contracts. And when I say contracts or soul contracts, what we've discovered is when the soul is between lives and before it comes here into another human experience, there are agreements in your soul tribe that you make with one another. It's all part of the great awakening, and we call it lessons or whatever we want to learn, but really it's part of the great awakening. And it says, okay, I want you to be my mom or my dad or my lover or my husband or wife or sister, brother, friend, whatever it may be, right? And I'm going to have you come in at certain times in my life to trigger these growth lessons or these mini awakenings until I come into my awakening. And we're going to have these roles, and this is going to be a dynamic between us. There's like some things that are set for us to experience. And
Yes.
so I love going there because it's really helped me, and it's helped a lot of people that I've worked with to like gain some clarity on like, what are some of these agreements? Why are we challenged in this way in our relationship? And what were the things that we were trying to learn? Like, why were they placed there for us? And it's amazing because it's like once you're able to kind of gain clarity about why these things are happening, you're able to really absorb those lessons on such a deeper level. And you're less likely to repeat patterns that are unhealthy. It's like you're able to get to the diamonds quicker and cultivate that and retrieve those diamonds and move on in your awakening smoother and easier just with that awareness.
Yeah. I had a very sacred experience when we first went to the Acacic Records, and I so of course I have mentioned many times how I was deeply wounded in religion. And to the point where I was kind of like, give somebody why would God give someone the ability to connect to the other side and it be so shamed and so negatively looked at and so misunderstood? And it made me very angry at God. I'm not going to lie. I was very bitter about it all. And we went to the Akashic Records, and I wasn't necessarily sure what I was going to experience or what to expect. But we walked into this side room, and there was like this scroll that I put into the wall. And for those who are like Harry Potter people, I don't know what spell this is, but it's where they're like able to create animations with their wands, and it's like they're real, but they're like light, or like they're not real, but it's real at the same time. And it was like I walked in this to the center of the room, and all of a sudden these images came to life, and they were like dancing around me. And it was when I was a child and I was playing hopscotch, and then I was looking at different places, but all of a sudden everything that stuck out to me was the sacred geometry of everything. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then it brought into this math and this analytical sacred geometry that, to me, I've always struggled with math. Schooling just wasn't my thing. I learned differently than what was spoken. So I always felt like I was stupid. I always felt like I was never smart enough to understand stuff. And it was like all of a sudden I was seeing all this, like, in regular day life. It was like weaving in these deep God-like universal truths that were just there. And I was like, whoa, this is so interesting. And I remember just watching as I got older, as I moved forward, it was all of a sudden I'm like to the other side of this space. And all of a sudden, just this white light was like, it just got brighter and brighter and brighter. And I was laying on the floor, and like my body was pulsing like more than I've ever experienced in my whole life. And I remember feeling like this is God. Like this is this higher power, this higher light. Like I've never felt so loved, so supported, so understood, so accepted. And it was so interesting because I wanted to put a label on this magnificent light. And I wanted to put this energy into a man's body of like this male god. And it was like I like heard this laughing, and then I was told, no, don't label what this is. You don't have to label what this is to experience the love. And it was like I just laid there, and you didn't, because you brought me to the space and then you kind of just watched. You didn't participate, you weren't a part of anything. You let it be totally my experience, my healing journey. And finally at the end, you're like, okay, we're gonna kind of wrap up, and you do these things to bring you back out. And it was like I didn't want to go. And it was everything that I had read about people experiencing in near death experiences, people who have crossed over and come back, like all of these things. And it was like so fulfilling, but it was the brightest light I had ever experienced. But I couldn't put a physical label on what that love was. And of course, we know that's God's love. That's that universal truth. Like all of it is the same. We just word it differently. But because I was so wounded with the natural man of what we perceive God has to be, it was almost like I was shown that I could look at it in different ways and still have that amazing healing factor. And it was such a profound experience. I like went out of the room afterward and I just laid on the bed by my husband. And I'm like, Curtis, I just met God. He's like, what? I'm like, I just met God. And it was so different than I ever imagined, but it was so beautiful and so what I needed. And I still fall back on that all of the time. And knowing that we have that ability to connect into that space, it doesn't have to be one specific way. It was so profound and soul changing. It was so beautiful.
So beautiful. Yeah, the Acacic Records is a space where people go when they leave their body. It's the place of life reviews. And so when
Mhm.
you're accessing these lives and these contracts, you're doing a life reviews, you're seeing things from a different perspective. And
Yeah.
it was so beautiful because what you experience is what a lot of people experience when they go into that room for their life review and they go to the light and they feel that energy, and it is indescribable.
Yeah. And I
And our minds always want to. It always wants to come up with a name, a description. It's like, why
yeah.
don't you just allow it to be?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was amazing because I worked with another girl for a while and I took her to the Akashic and I allowed her to experience whatever she needed to. And it was very similar, just in different ways for her. And it was so beautiful to just witness, but to just allow that to be her experience. And
Mhm.
then one time I was working with a male, and he was like, hey, I really am interested in learning more about the galactic family. Do you do anything with that? Which we'll have to do a whole podcast on.
Yes.
So I was like, well, I haven't done much with that, but I can definitely, give it a try. And I was brought to the Akashic, and it was like all of a sudden I was able to connect into past experiences with the galactic family that were very connected to him, relaying that message through the Akashic. And it's so interesting because then I sent him to another girl who does a lot of Akashic record readings. And he's met with her a couple of times. And the last time I met with him, he was talking about what she had said was very connected to what I had told him. She just gave more depth about it. And so, even knowing that, like, you can access that and receive, like, that's why I was saying it's like galactic and not even just universal. It's like this huge galactic records or accounts that we can connect into. And it's such a
Mhm.
beautiful tool to have when we use it the proper way, of course. There's light and dark in all things, there's boundaries in all things too, or whatever. But it's when you're
Right.
aligned with that true, soulful, pure intent, there's like endless possibilities.
Yeah. And when we do the tube of light meditation, when we align, when we set intention, you will get that result. If you set intention, say, this is what I'm going to connect with, I'm going to connect into the healing answers where these things are rooted. I'm ready. I'm ready to shift. I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to expand my awareness and consciousness. then that is exactly what you will get. And a lot of people, they don't realize what they're capable of. And that's what I love about what we do, because we open these conversations to say, look, this is possible. I mean, these are
Yeah.
things that you can experience in this life. You don't have to wait to cross the veil, or you don't have to feel like you got to achieve a certain level of enlightenment. And that is, those are stories we tell ourselves to keep us asleep.
Yeah.
This is something that is available that you can experience in this life, that improves your well-being, that improves the way that you experience your life. Because look, I'm not interested, and we talked about this in the past, I'm a very practical mystic. I mean, if it's not going to make permanent change in your life, in the sense of make it better, or help you feel empowered, help you come into the fullness of what you're here to do, right? The fullness of yourself, I don't really see the point. To me, it's just a bunch of blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information that's going out right now, because we are in the Aquarian age. There is a lot that we have to filter through to figure out, what is true information, what is not, what's not, what's rooted in fear, what's rooted in love. You have to get really clear about your boundaries and what you are choosing into. That's why discernment is so, so important, is because you're choosing into something. When I chose into this and the exploration of this, it was rooted in love, and it helped improve my life, like in a tangible way,
Mm-hmm. It doesn't hold
and
you back or pull you from being present, and actually helps you become more present.
you do become more present and more at peace. You're not
Yes.
so caught up in these the energies and the blocks and the things that you're not sure of. And even like, you think about how much energy you use in your life trying to understand relationships. Why does this person do this, and why do I feel this way? And we spend so much time in that mental energy. We're not even present in our bodies and
Yeah.
in the here and now, because we're just trying to figure out, why did they say that, and why do I feel this way, and and I just wish I could get to the root of understanding. And I have a very active mental body. I have to really keep my mind busy and structured. And what I found is that when I explored this, to be able to understand it, like it or not, right? But to be able to bring awareness and understanding, it was like I wrapped it up and I put it aside. And all of a sudden, I had so much more available energy to be here and to also focus on what I wanted to draw into my life,
Yeah.
because I wasn't so caught up in the why this and why that. So that was why I loved soul contracts and exploring the Akashic, because
Yeah.
it helped me. It's like, I can get this, if I can bring awareness and understanding and retrieve that wisdom, then I can put that aside, and it leaves more available space for all the prosperity and the abundance and the opportunities, and for me to focus on what it is that I'm drawing into the here and now,
Right.
instead of being up here.
Well, and it goes back to you saying that sometimes we make healing complicated when it's
Mhm.
not intended to be complicated.
No.
And that's how past life and Akashic Record should be too, is it's an exploration, but it's not the end all be all. And it's not something that we have to try to understand fully, because that holds us back from experiencing what the world has to offer and what we came here to experience. And so,
Exactly.
honestly, for people who are interested or who are listening, I would 100% set up an appointment with Candace. She does amazing soul
Or
contracts.
you, hun. Both of us can do this.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Is setting up an appointment if you're interested in learning more about Acacic Records or Acacic Record readings or whatever that looks like, is
Our
to
past
understand
lives.
past lives. Yes, there's so much there. And you want to make sure you go to someone that you're comfortable with if you're not able to do it or you're not fully comfortable on your own. And so that's why I'm like, you got to go to Candace. But I'm happy to help too, is just because I've seen so much healing. But because you helped me know how to do it, now I can do it for myself. And
You
that's
and
the
I both are
point.
that way. Like we have no interest in saying, "Oh, you have to come to me in
Yes.
order for you to." It's like you come to me long enough for me to show you how to get there and then you do it
Uh-huh.
on your own. I have no
Yes.
interest in having anybody be dependent on me because, well, that would be ridiculous. We all have this power and wisdom inside of us.
Yes.
But a lot of people, they just are not sure how to do it or they don't feel
Yeah.
confident in getting in that space. So I just love working with people long enough. It's like giving them the key and then say, now you got the key. Now you
Now
get to do
you
it
get to
on your own
experience
whenever
it.
you feel like you need to do it. It's a tool you get to use and it's empowering for them.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I do too. I think that's why we work so well together too. Is our purpose is to help people find and utilize tools that work for them. And so of course, we're going to talk about all kinds of different options, all kinds of different things, and
Yes.
some things may resonate with some people and some things may not, and that's totally fine. But it's like, well, how can we help you? And that's our goal, is like this podcast, is how can we help you open up tools or introduce you to concepts that you may be very intrigued by, like I was, but just don't know how to access it or what the point is or anything like that. And so of course we have, meditations, journey works. We'll be doing all different kinds of things, but it's to ultimately help you explore it for yourself and gain that knowledge to then be able to learn, because as we know, knowledge is power.
Yes, it
And
is.
we're here to just bring that power to help you remember to stay awake for who you truly are.
Yes.
For watching Modern Sages, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We are so grateful for your support. If you want to follow us, we have an Instagram account as well as on Facebook. We have our podcast, which is the Modern Sages podcast as well.
And we are so excited to launch our Gifts of Spirit classes in our Modern Sages Mystery School.
Absolutely. Oh, we're so excited. So we're going to link the information below in the show notes for more information about our mystery school.